Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today for the launch of Outside by Sean McCammon. It's fantastic to see so many of you here in the audience. Though we'd love to be in person, we're really glad you could join us here on Zoom. First up, here at New Star Books, we are broadcasting from and have the solemn privilege of working on the stolen territories of the Coast Salish people of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. This land was never ceded, sold, or given up. And as we are all tuning in from far and wide, we'd like to invite you all at this point to take a moment to pay respects and acknowledge the First Nations peoples of the land upon which you're currently residing. If you'd like to pop that in the chat or just take a moment to yourselves, that would be fantastic. Before we get started with the fun stuff today, we have a couple of housekeeping notes. We will be recording this launch. I believe it is recording at the moment. And you will be able to catch that online in a few days' time. Make sure you're subscribed to our email newsletter or following us on our social media accounts at New Star Books to keep up with that. We are also making use of the Q&A feature here on Zoom. You can see that in the bottom panel of the webinar today. If you would not like your name to be included on the recording, please feel free to submit your questions anonymously. And last but not least, we will be hosting a giveaway at the end of the launch. We'll be giving away 2 copies of Sean's book. Make sure you stick around until the very end for the prize draw. And now I have the pleasure of introducing our host for this evening. Suzanne Ruda is a Halton, Ontario-based writer whose work has appeared online and in print for more than 22 years. Her credits include Profit Magazine, Money Sense, Canadian Business Online, and Reader's Digest. A busy family, including her husband, 2 rapidly growing children, and 2 feisty dogs keep her on her toes. And I will hand it over to Suzanne now, who will be joining us there.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Melissa, and welcome to everybody. And thank you for joining us this evening or this afternoon, depending on where we are, to celebrate the launch of a great new book and an exciting new Canadian author, Sean McCammon. I think it's going to be a fun evening, and we appreciate that you've taken out time to be here with us. By way of introduction, Sean is an outdoor education teacher, singer, songwriter, and now a novelist who lives in Kitchener, Ontario. He's also been a friend of mine for, I think, over 30 years now, unbelievably, give or take. And for those of you who don't know, Sean and I met working at Camp Huronda, which is a summer camp in the Muskoka region for kids living with type 1 diabetes. So it's my distinct pleasure to welcome you this evening, Sean. You can switch on there. There you are.
Hello, Suzanne. Thank you for that introduction. That's unbelievable that we've known each other over 30 years. That is crazy. Look how far we've come. Look how far we've come.
So here's your beautiful book.
Yes.
And I think what tonight we'll do is just sort of go on a journey through the creation of the book and how you started, how you ended up, and where we are now. But the first thing I should ask you, and I think this might be one of the hardest questions of the night, is what is Outside about?
Well, yeah, you know that I hate this question.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So the book revolves around a guy named David Woods. He's a first-year teacher. He's teaching at an elementary school in a small town in Eastern Ontario. And he seems like a good guy, seems like he has a good life. But the book opens up with him in Japan, racked with guilt, heavily medicated. And we know that somewhere along the line, things went off the rails. And so the book goes along 2 threads. So you're with David in Japan in the present, in Kyoto, Japan. And while he's obviously traumatized, he's trying to find some meaning in life. And then you've got this other thread where you're back in Canada with David in the past. His life is pretty good. He's trying to figure out his teaching career. But you know something is on the horizon. You know something is going to happen. And just like, yeah, And just like in other books, like other stuff happens. People say things. Yeah. And Suzanne, tell people how I normally describe the book.
There's a guy,
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
stuff
So,
happens.
yeah, yeah.
So take us back to the beginning then. When did you decide to write a book, to write a novel, and how did you come up with this premise?
Well, I lived in Japan. So I lived in Japan in the early 90s. I lived in Tokyo for 6 months in 1992, 8 months in 1993. And I probably had the idea for the book, I don't know, like 25 years ago, something like that. And, it's just a novel. It seems like such a large undertaking. You never think to yourself, well, I'm going to sit down and do it. And I'd never come home from work and think, oh, I'll write a novel. But I'm going to say like 7 years ago, I took 6 months off work, and I had a list of 6 creative things in my life I wanted to work on. Number one was my band, who are on this meeting right now. Hi guys. We'd gone into a studio and we'd recorded some tracks for an album, and it just wasn't getting done. And so my number one thing on that was finish band album. Then there was start new album, and then there was I was going to package up some of my poems and stuff. Number 6 on the list was write a novel, and I never thought I'd get to it, but with probably like, I don't know, 3 weeks left in my time off from work, I sat down in a chair one day and I started it. And at the end of the day, I didn't think, that was painful or that was terrible. I didn't hate it. So I did it the next day too. And probably in the 3 weeks, I probably pumped out, I don't know, 10 or 15,000 words. And then I went back to work and I just left it. And then I got 6 months off again 4 years ago. And that's when I wrote the bulk of it. So it's 92,000 words. And I wrote like 1,000 words a day. So I'd sit down for like 5 hours and try to pump out 1,000 words. And yeah. And so I wrote the bulk of it 4 years ago. And then I went back to work and let it sit there again. So,
Okay, that's great. I can't imagine writing that many words, but I guess when you spread it out over a certain amount of time, it works out.
Yeah, and there was no time where I just come home from work and have dinner and, say to my family, oh, I'm going to go downstairs and write for a couple hours. I had to you couldn't even get in the mindset of writing in 2 hours. So I had to be not working. That was my mindset anyways.
Right. Now it's clear that your personal experiences have informed a lot of what's in the book. You're an outdoor educator, so is David, more or less, and he's got that mindset. You've been to Japan, as you said, a few times. Maybe tell us a bit about what it was like to live in Japan and how these experiences informed the writing of your book.
Yeah, so when I graduated from Queen's University in 91, and a guy I was living with was a Japanese Canadian guy, Al. I don't know if he's on here right now, but hi, Al. And he'd never been to Japan before, but his family was born in Japan, and so he wanted to go to Japan. And my parents had lived in Japan in the 60s. And so I'd grown up with Japanese food and Japanese pictures on the walls and that kind of thing. And so when we graduated, we just got on a plane and flew to Tokyo without jobs, without a place to stay, and just, made our way. And we ended up living in a gaijin house, which is like a boarding house for foreigners in Japan with people from all over the world. So there were like a dozen people in a house from all over the world, and some would just come and go. Some were there a long time. Some would come for a couple weeks and be gone. And so that was kind of a neat place. And so I put David in one of those houses. We lived in a couple, and one was terrible. So I stuck David in the terrible one. So that part of it is is from real experience. Yeah.
Are there
But it
other,
was just,
are there real places that are in the book, both in Canada and?
yeah, everything in Japan is real. There's no made up places there. In Canada, I started out with the Canadian rural places in Eastern Ontario being the real places. And then because I was making some bad things happen, I thought maybe I shouldn't name that town. Or so I made it a fictional town, even though the town is really Cars, Ontario, where I went to middle school. So yeah.
So this what kind of begs the question, are you David?
Uh, am I David? Yes, I get asked that a lot because, the guy he's a teacher and he goes to Japan. I don't, I don't feel like David. I don't feel like David is like me at all. David is a big farm boy. He doesn't make jokes. He's more straightforward. He's a straight ahead guy. Right is right and wrong is wrong, and until his life goes off the rails. But I don't think I'm David. When I was talking to the publisher, Rolf, he said, maybe you're like Mitchell. And I thought, well, that's pretty good because some of his conversation probably riffs off things I would say.
And who's Mitchell?
Mitchell is David's friend who encourages him to go to Japan to get away from the terrible things that are happening in Ontario. But in a weird way, like all the characters in the book are me, right? Like they all came out of me. They're all saying words that I thought up, and so I don't know. Like I see similarities with like the Reverend in the book for people who've read it. Like when I was in high school, my guidance teacher said, "Oh, you should be a reverend. You should be a priest or something." I'm like, all right. I never went to church, but
you have become a little bit of a priest.
yeah. All right, Mr. Dixon, fine, sure, maybe priest.
So maybe this would be a good spot for you to do a couple of readings from the book. I know you were going to give us an example of David in Canada and David in Japan, and maybe you can read those now and then explain why you chose those passages.
Well, I was thinking of passages that would actually keep the reader's attention. So I thought I'd start off by reading the sex scene. Yeah, well,
go there.
It's not graphic, but I don't know. Maybe dim the lights wherever you are. I don't know. So yeah, so the first scene here, this is in Ontario. And David and his girlfriend Joanna have rented a farmhouse. And David has figured out his students, like learning outside better than inside. And so he's thinking about starting up kind of an outdoor club. So that's the scene here that also involves some romance. So yeah.
Hang on. Wait for it.
All right. Each time David put wood in the stove, he liked to say, "That's good wood," imitating his father. As Joanna loaded logs into the fire, David said, "Say it." Joanna talked out of the side of her mouth like Archie. "That's good wood." They sat on the couch in their living room watching the Buffalo Bills football game. Joanna put her wine glass on the floor and pulled a sleeping bag over them. David said, "We can call it the Dumford Mills Outdoors Club. We can go fishing, snowshoeing, animal tracking, owling, and maybe next year I can get all the students' parents to sign on, and then I'll do all the same stuff as part of school. I need to call George. He was a scout leader. He's led all kinds of hikes." David's father cheered for the Buffalo Bills, so growing up, David cheered for the Bills. Part of David's fun in watching the football games was imagining what his father would be yelling at the television. Today the Bills were losing badly. Archie would be yelling a lot. David said, "If I start a club, it will help me organize outdoor activities for my class next year." "It's nice you can keep the same grade," said Joanna. "It's nice that I have a job," said David. "I was talking to Mitchell and no one we went to school with has a job. Some are supply teaching, but I'm probably the only person with a full-time teaching job." Joanna said, "Who would have thought we'd end up in Dumford Mills? It's like Bedford Falls from It's a Wonderful Life." David put his head under the sleeping bag and crawled on top of Joanna. He said, "And I'm Jimmy Stewart." Joanna put her arms around David's neck. "Jimmy Stewart hates Bedford Falls. He wants to kill himself." David kissed her. "He ends up just fine. He has an angel watching over him." The wood stove filled the drafty house with a warmth that could only be appreciated when it was cold outside. Cats with various maladies washed themselves beside the fire, and the Buffalo Bills, full of so much promise at the beginning of the year, fumbled away their season. "Oh, baby," said Joanna. "That's good wood." All right, so we've established this is peak happiness for our central character right there. But the book opens with David in an airport in Japan. So we know that somewhere along the line things have changed. The pharmaceutical evidence of David's anguish was spread out on the table. The Japanese customs officer examined the pill bottles one at a time. David wasn't sure if the woman spoke English, so when she picked up his sleeping bags, he said, "For sleep," and feigned sleeping. When she scrutinized his migraine medication, he said, "That's for headaches," and rubbed his temples. The woman now turned to look at David. The expression on her face made David think she was waiting for an answer to a question. He looked at her hopelessly, wondering if his poorly planned escape from Canada would end in this white room. It was then that David realized the woman was wiggling a package of laxatives between her thumb and forefinger. Apparently, she was looking forward to his next exercise in charades. The suggestion of humor allowed David to relax, and the officer began repacking his suitcase more neatly than she had found it. As she zipped up the bag, she asked, "Why have you come to Japan?" The tone of her voice suggested this was not an official question. It sounded like she was making friendly conversation, and David considered confessing everything to her. Finally, he said, "I just had to get away from home for a while." "Of course," the woman smiled, "like all the rest." Intrigue. All right.
Yes,
So there you have. You've got both sides. You've got good life in Ontario, but something down the road is not good. And then poor David in Japan, who's lost all meaning in life. And so the book goes along both alleys.
Yeah, I think it sets up a good bit of tension and sort of a bit of, you got to imagine what's gone wrong as you go through and put it together. So I'm going to take us on a slight aside here. I know that you are also a musician and that music is a big part of your life, and it's often informed by your life as well. You have, for example, an album called Songs from the Sugar Shack, in which you drew on your, time in the maple syrup shack. Have you written any music about Japan?
Yeah, well, they said, Sean, you should sing a couple songs. So I started thinking about, do I have any songs about Japan? And the only one I have about Japan, I was living in Tokyo. The first time I went to Japan, I was living in Tokyo. And I was there for 6 months. And with like a couple weeks left to go, people said, "Oh, you should visit Kyoto. It's really beautiful. You should go there." And so a guy who I'd been living with in Tokyo, he had moved to Nagoya, which is halfway between Tokyo and Kyoto. And so when I was traveling to Kyoto, I stopped at this guy's apartment, and he was living he had a roommate who was a child actor in a Canadian TV series. And so I stayed there for the night. I remember we played Crazy Eights for money, and we drank, and I had some laundry to do. So I went down to a laundromat that night, and it closed before I could finish drying my clothes. So I took my clothes back to the apartment. I hung them all over the balcony. And then in the morning, I got up and I grabbed all my clothes and I went off to Kyoto. And one day, I'm hiking around the mountains in Kyoto, and I'm like, I don't think these are my pants. So I think I've got somebody else's jeans on, but they fit, and so I just kept going. And so Kyoto was very beautiful. It was just an amazing city. But I get back to Tokyo, and I get a phone call from the roommate saying, "Sean, when you were at our apartment, did you happen to pick up a pair of jeans?" And I was like, "Yeah, I did." And he said, "Oh, okay, great. I didn't know where they were. Can you send them back to me?" And I said, "Yeah, sure. That's too bad because they fit really well." And he said, "You wore my pants?" And I was like, "Yeah, I didn't know where they came from. I wore them. Listen, I'll wash them and I'll send them back to you. Don't worry about it." And he was like, "Yeah, you got my pants dirty?" I was like, "Don't worry about it. I'll wash them. I'll send it back to you. So I send them back the pants, and I go back home, and I had to go right off to camp where we were working. And I'm at camp a couple days, and my mother phones me, who never phoned me at camp ever. And she said, Sean, we just received a letter that's very disturbing. And she said, well, I'll read it to you. So she said, Dear Mrs. McCammon, I am writing you to tell you what kind of son you have. I graciously let your son stay at my apartment on his travels, and while he was here, he stole a pair of my pants. And when I caught him in his lies, he sent me back a pair of his dirty, ripped jeans and kept my brand new pair of 501 Levi's. And please send me $100, or the next time I see your son, I'm going to kick the crap out of him.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so I wrote a song about that.
Can we hear it?
But that's, oh God, this is the only relatable Japan song I have. I don't know.
I think we'd all love to hear this.
It's called Nagoya, which is where the guy lives. Hitchhiking with a lady down the line, looking for Nagoya with a haircut on my mind. Kissed her on the corner, I was caught up in the scene. I sat upon my naps reading manga magazines. Oh my, oh my, my. I sat upon my naps reading manga magazines. Well, we found a friend's apartment and we had a little fun. We played Crazy Eights from Money there to U2's #1. I went into the laundromat before I went to bed. I had Morning in America playing in my head. Oh my, oh my, my. I had Morning in America playing in my head. We split up at the station in an early morning rain. I went up to Kyoto and I took the bullet train. I climbed into the mountains and I sat upon a stone. I was looking at a Buddha man a million miles from home. Oh my, oh my, my. I was looking at a Buddha man a million miles from home. Sitting on that stone, I thought I'm never going back. But every train, baby, runs both way down the tracks. Walking through that door was like waking from a dream. And when I got home, my friend said I stole his jeans. Oh my, oh my. Yeah, when I got home, my friend said I stole his jeans. Bucket full of green fluorescent slime came down on your head maybe one too many times. Cause after all that sake, I don't know where the goodwill went. It was just laundromat confusion, man, it wasn't bad intent. Oh my, oh my, my. It was just laundromat confusion, man, it wasn't bad intent. It was Confucius or maybe it was Kant who said to really know a man you gotta get inside his pants. I walked around in yours for 7 days and 7 nights. All I know about you, man, your ass is way too tight. Oh my, oh my. Yeah, all I know about you is your ass is way too tight. Somewhere in the darkness there's a cold clear mountain stream. I feel it in my blood and I see it in my dreams. It's a million miles away but it's where I wanna be. I'd lay there in the water, let it wash all over me. Oh my, oh my. I just lay there in the water, let it wash all over me. All right.
That's fantastic. Thank you. That reminds me of the saying, don't get on the wrong side of an author or a musician. You might be
Yeah.
sorry where you land up.
Am I going to get the crap kicked out of me now?
No, you didn't name names.
No.
So I'm going to go back now to the book and get into some of the nitty gritty of the actual process of you writing the book. This was your first novel. What was the writing process like for you? Did you write every day? Did you have a favorite spot to write? Did you work from an outline? How did that go for you?
Yeah. I didn't have an outline. Like I thought about the book enough that I had the whole plot kind of in my head right from the start. But I just, I'd sit in a reclining chair with the laptop in my lap, and I would put on the folk music station on low. And after my wife went off to work, my son went off to school, I'd try to write for 5 hours. So if I could write from like 9 o'clock to 2 o'clock, and then at 2 o'clock go buy groceries or unload the dishwasher, do something, you know, productive. that was good. So yeah, so I tried to write, you know, 1,000 words a day, and I don't write quickly. Like if I know a lot of people say, yeah, when you're writing, just let the words flow out and come back and fix it later. I went slowly. If I didn't know how to use a semicolon, I'd just stop in the middle and research how to use semicolons. And
Did you,
yeah.
that reminds me, did you have to do a lot of extra research at all?
Did I have to do research? Not for the Canada side of things, like the teaching part and, you know, how schools work, and I felt pretty good about that. Kyoto, I never lived in Kyoto. So David lives in Kyoto. I've been there a couple times, and I did have to, you know, look at pictures online, or, you know, I don't know how people research books before the internet, but you can just get on and you can, you know, see a travel log or you can read somebody's diary about being in different places. You can see all their pictures and get a really good sense of the places you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I read that Ken Follett has 12 full-time researchers on his staff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that'd be
Wow.
helpful.
Yeah, that would be. Do you have any writing influences?
Well, I mean, like my favorite authors are probably like Kurt Vonnegut and John Irving. But I know when Rolf called me up, he said, you know, who do you read? And I was like, you know, because I'm probably reading mostly nonfiction these days. I'd read a couple John Grisham books, but I didn't want to mention those. Say, oh, yeah, I read John Grisham. So, yeah, I don't know what to say about that. I guess I'm sure I'm influenced by everything I've ever read. It's just hard to know who shows up in your writing style.
It all comes out. It filters through the big filter.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So how long did this process take now to write? And what did you do when you were finished?
Yeah, so I finished the bulk of the book like 4 years ago, and then I took time off like a year and a half ago too, just to finish up the book, and so I needed to polish. I knew it needed polishing up. So I'd been to like a writers conference in town here, maybe I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, and I'd signed up for an electronic newsletter by Susan Fish, a local writer and editor. And so when I finished the book and I was thinking, where can I send this to or something, I called Susan Fish out of the blue and said, you know, how do you feel about reading this book? And so she read it and gave me very good feedback. And she said, I think this is one of the two best things I've edited. And so that really made me feel good. I think that probably means I was second. Like, yeah. But, you know, I didn't know how good the book was really. I mean, my wife had read it and she was positive on it, but until I had a real person, well, not, sorry, Kelly. She's upstairs. Until I had like, you know, somebody who deals in books, you know, tell you something positive. I didn't know what it was. So she made a lot of grammatical changes and suggested a few like structural changes. And so I did those. And then I just, I sent them off to Canadian publishers and a few Canadian agents, hoping for the best. And then one day I got an email. I don't know if this is going to be backwards for you, but I got an email from Rolf at New Star Publishing. I don't know if you can see what that's
right way around.
It's backwards, but you can read it.
No, it's right way.
Pretty interesting. Can we talk? That was the whole email. Pretty interesting. Can we talk? And so, yeah, I Googled this guy's name. I didn't know who Rolf was. And so he was like a legit publisher at a legit publishing company, and he'd been in business a long time and won awards. And so I thought, yeah, I guess we should talk. Yeah, let's talk.
So I'm going to stop you there, and I'll just go back a bit and ask you what was, how did you decide who to send the manuscript to? I mean,
well, there's only a certain number of Canadian publishers in the world. It's not a big list. And, you know, some of them are, you know, have a narrow focus for what they publish. They want to publish nonfiction or women's writers or Indigenous perspectives. And so I was just looking for somebody who publishes general literary upscale type fiction. And so I probably sent it to 20 or 25 publishers and maybe a dozen agents as well. And I got all sorts of rejections, very friendly letters. And, you know, some of them actually wanted you to send paper. They wanted, like, you know, your whole thing mailed off to them in the mail, which is kind of my style. So I thought, oh, that's good. Who's going to print off 250 pages and mail it? So maybe that gives you a better chance. So I like those ones too. So I sent them away and, you know, hope for the best.
So did New Star grab your attention at all or just was it?
Well, they didn't have strict guidelines on submissions. They wanted the whole novel, which I kind of liked as well. A lot of places just said, send me 50 pages, and if we like the 50 pages, we'll ask for the rest. But if it's digital, why not send the whole thing, right? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
makes sense. Yeah. And so, yeah, I was just, you know, I was set to self-publish. Like, if nobody called me,
Really?
I was set to try and figure it out and have to go through everything myself. So,
Okay. Well, I think this
thank you, New Star.
a really great spot to bring on Ralph Maurer, who is the publisher at New Star Books and who sent you that fateful email. Maybe he can have a bit of a chat with us.
Give us one moment, folks. We're getting Rolf in now.
Yeah, Rolf's not much of a Zoomer. He's more of a phone call kind of guy.
That's okay.
Yeah. But this call I had with Rolf, that was one good call. Like, that was very satisfying for me. First of all, Rolf knew the book inside out. I didn't expect when he called up that he would have read the book start to finish and know it really well. And I was kind of worried that when I chatted, you know, that he'd say, oh, we like your book, but if we think it would be better if it was set in China instead of Japan or something. So I was kind of worried that, you know, or yeah, we think the David character should be female, or I don't know. I was worried what would be said. So I'm interested in what Rolf was thinking there.
Well, yeah.
Am I here yet?
Chance, yeah, we can hear you and we can see you, and you're live. I just want to
fantastic. Hi, Susan. Thank you for hosting.
Hi, you're very welcome. Thank you for asking. And I think I'd like you to introduce New Star Books for our audience who may not be familiar with you as a publisher, and then talk a bit about what it was that you saw in Sean's manuscript and what attracted you to it.
Sure. I'm guessing everybody in the audience has a computer, so the easiest way to find out about us is www.newstarbooks.com. And we also have an amazing little newsletter, and you can get yourself on that list easily enough. I'd like to get cut straight to the heart of the matter and talk about Sean's book. It's nice hearing those nice things said about me. And yeah, Sean's book came to us in a stream that is called the unsolicited submissions stream. And some people have other names for it. I don't like it because early on in my not long after I became publisher here at New Star, I was actually very fortunate to find in our unsolicited manuscript submission stack manuscripts by a couple of really, really good Canadian writers. One of them is Pauline Holdstock, and the other that will actually be well known to a lot of people in our audience tonight is Elizabeth Hay. And so these two writers trained me to keep an eye on that, those unsolicited manuscripts. So myself and probably a few dozen other people in Canada, we probably read more unpublished books than most people read published books in their lifetime. And one of the skills you have to develop is the one that George Bernard Shaw alludes to in that famous line about how you don't have to eat a whole egg to know that it's rotten. The obverse of that is also true. You can tell that this egg is really a good egg by just having a bite or two. And that's what happened with Sean's manuscript. Once I got past the idea that Sean's book was about some dude who goes to Japan and meets all these interesting people, Australians, all kinds of amazing stuff, and that it was actually about a school teacher who takes his kids out on a field trip and one of them dies, that's a completely different story. And by the time I had figured that out, I was hooked. And here's why I was hooked. It's not that hard to write. You can learn how to write good sentences and stuff like that, but there are certain, every teacher knows there are certain things that are unteachable. And in writing, what's unteachable is storytelling. You either can tell a story or you cannot tell a story. And Sean knows how to tell a story. He has a sense of what a story is, and I think this book demonstrates it. But what he also has a really great sense of is how to dole out the crumbs, how to give you just enough crumbs to get you turning those pages to see what the heck is happening next. The other thing that you can't really teach a writer is what we sometimes call an ear for dialogue. And on one level, that is like hearing how people naturally speak and reproducing that in your writing. But it works at a deeper level as well. A really good writer is able to hear in their characters' dialogues the stuff that their characters aren't actually saying and don't know how to say and can't get themselves to say. And Sean's dialogue and his scenes with his characters work in that way, where so much is unspoken and comes out in the cracks between the, what one person is saying and the other. And to me, even more remarkable about Sean's ear and his sensitivity to his characters, these inventions of his, is that this ear of his is particularly trained towards kids. And that's an especially rare talent, because I think for a lot of us, once we leave childhood behind, you can't go there anymore. It is a lost continent, and it's really hard even to project ourselves back into that. And it's a very rare talent for a grown-up of any sort, let alone a writer, to be able to hear what those kids are saying and what they're not saying. I mentioned Elizabeth Hay. One of the people that Sean's book reminded me of, even though there are many ways very different kinds of writers, is Liz Hay, because she too has got she's got really good antennae for how kids think and express themselves and feel. So those were all things that really drew me to Sean's book. And really, by the time I was a fifth of the way into it, I knew that we had a live one here, and it was no problem reading it. It was a fairly lengthy manuscript, but it never at any point felt too long. I know that other people have had that similar experience, and maybe Audrey's going to be talking later on. I don't know. Hi, Audrey, if you're here. But Audrey is a very busy and in-demand editor. When we get her, it's great, but we can't always get her because she's got a stack of stuff on her desk. And when we sent her Sean's manuscript, she said, I don't know, I'm kind of busy, but I'll have a look at it. And I don't know, maybe she wants to tell that story.
Oh, you muted yourself, Rolf.
I have an unstable internet connection. I think that's almost a redundancy. The last thing I want to say is you had novel writing as number 6 on your list. It maybe should have been a bit higher. I think that's all I really wanted to say here tonight. Thank you, Sean.
Well, thank you. I think that's some really great insight. Thank you for joining us, Rolf. So, Sean, I think what we've learned here is that you are a good egg, which
All right.
people who know you already knew, but now they know your book is a good egg too. So
Yeah, you're not going to vomit after reading the book. That's good.
That's always a good sign. Highly desirable. What was it like to get that email and then I think a subsequent phone call from Rolf?
Oh, well, I didn't know what I was getting into, and I was worried that he might want me to change stuff or give me a lot of homework or something. But he was like, no, it's good. It's fairly clean. We'll have to set you up with an editor, but no problem. And, just the way he knew the characters, I never talked with anybody about the book like that in that depth. And, and he had good things to say, and he wanted to know, they looked for me online. They thought I'd probably written something else. And so I didn't have, So it was just, it was a really good phone call because I had been thinking, okay, I'm going to have to self-publish and go through all that. And to have somebody say, we want to put this out in the world. We want to pay you money. We're going to look after printing it and, putting on a cover on it and all that stuff. It was just, it was a good moment. Good moment. Yeah.
Must have been really gratifying because really, I mean, with the apart from Susan Fish, you were in a bubble and you don't know, right? You write in isolation until it goes out into the world. You don't know.
Yeah. And I see Audrey's popped up here. Audrey, when they set me up with Audrey, like she's a really good editor too. Like I picked Susan out of the blue, and she put me in the right direction. And working with Audrey was really good too.
Hi, Audrey.
Hi there.
Hi. What was your experience with Sean's book, with Outside, and what were your thoughts when you read it and went through it?
Similar to Rolf. I got it from them and sort of started picking away at it in the evenings after I'd finished with other stuff. And it was a case where it was really hard. Like once you start reading it, it was really hard to stop. I'd always think, oh, well, I'll read one more chapter. And then you'd get to the end of the chapter. It's like, well, what happened? And then you'd have to read the next chapter and the next one. So yeah, it's very easy. It goes down real smooth. So so that was good, and it was very well written. So I think when Rolf sent it, he said, we don't imagine we're going to have to change much, which I hope he told you, Sean, when he talked, because if you were worried that that they were going to ask for changes, I hadn't realized you were quite so concerned about that. But yeah, it was in very good shape, and it's just always really nice to work on a manuscript, that is not the first draft, which this one obviously wasn't, and where the author is thinking about it. Like I'd send it back and there'd be a few minor grammatical or spelling changes and a couple of questions and a few like, well, you might want to, you use the same word twice in one paragraph, you might want to vary the wording. And often there would be more changes that Sean had made reading through it again, where he'd think, oh, I can write the scene better, or I can set up this dialogue better. So that's a really gratifying thing for an editor, where the author is as engaged in the process as the editor is. So yeah, went really well.
Yeah, and I'm a high school English teacher by trade, and I thought, gosh, after, spending 5 years on this, and, there's spell check, right? That, oh, this is going to be clean. And then when I got it back from Susan or Audrey, I was like, oh my God, look at all these grammar things I have to fix.
It was pretty clean, but yeah, that's always a shock for people. So
Yeah.
Audrey, do you know Japanese?
no.
Okay, that's interesting. But you were able to go through and help him with phrasing and things like that.
Google is a wonderful thing. Like, it was amazing. Like, he would write something and I just think, well, I'm just going to throw this in there and see what comes up. And, usually it was right, but every now and then I would get something where, well, here it was either a variant spelling or, maybe wrong. I don't know, but it's anything I knew about Google, or anything I knew about Japanese comes from Google.
Well, that's wonderful, and thank you, Audrey. We appreciate your input on this, and it's nice to see that you and Rolf sort of have the same opinion of the book and how it struck you. So that's wonderful.
Yeah, well, thank you.
The product is excellent. So thank you.
Good.
Yes, thank you, Audrey. You're very good editor. I want to work with you again on the next book.
Ooh, there's the next book. So Sean, I guess now this was kind of a crash course in how publishing goes for you, right? Like you've gone through the editing now. I guess you had to learn about contracts and permissions and cover selection and so on and so forth, and all the other moving pieces that go into creating a book. What were some of the things that you learned?
What did I learn? Gosh, well, I don't know what I learned. I don't know. It'll certainly be easier the next time. I think just having the process of knowing, I think my writing probably got better as I wrote, and just knowing, what needs to be tightened up. Like, a lot of editing is just getting rid of all the junk, getting rid of all the extra words and paring things down. And so I think my writing will be better on the next one. I think I've figured out how to write a query letter, which is kind of a standard letter you have to send to publishers. And so I think the next time will be smoother. The New Star has made things pretty smooth for me, actually. I didn't know what I was getting into, and, they sent a contract and I had to figure that out. But, everything's been smooth, really.
I understand there's a story in regard to permissions that you had to get for the book.
Oh yeah, I included a lot of song lyrics in the book. So there's a guy in the book who plays guitar, and so I had put in a bunch of song lyrics, and of course that's trouble. So everybody wanted money to use the song lyrics. So AC/DC, for example, wanted $200 for me to use the phrase, "She was a fast machine, she kept her motor clean." And you can get around that because the song titles are not copyright. So instead of "She was a fast machine, she kept her motor clean," you can just put in "You shook me all night long," because that's the name of the song.
Okay.
So yeah, some of it I had to cut out and some I had to switch around, and so I knew that would be trouble when I was writing it. Yeah, but I would have actually loved to have been sued by AC/DC. Like, that'd be worth $200. That would be, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be wonderful. Sure.
Mm-hmm. Dear Angus, sorry for.
Didn't mean to step on any toes there.
Yeah.
So how did it finally feel to hold this baby in your hands when it was all done?
Yeah, well, I got a box of books delivered to my house, and, it wasn't a jump up and down moment. It wasn't like, yay! It was more like, all right, this is good. The baby has all 10 fingers and 10 toes, and it's healthy and great. It's in the world. It's in the world. So, yeah, just satisfying. Yep.
I bet. I know. Well, I've read it twice now, and I on each reading, I've discovered a little bit more. It's given me a little bit more to think about. So, you know, it bears repeated readings. That's excellent. And this is, I know we're getting to the Q&A later, but this follows right into one of my other questions, which is, what's next for you? What will we see more books by Sean McCammon?
I have started writing another novel. Yes. I've written probably 15,000 words of that one, and I need time off. So I'm looking at taking more time off down the road here and sitting down. And I think this is probably my retirement lifestyle. If people keep publishing them, I think I can get a pretty good routine going with it.
Any teasers on the next one?
I don't know if this will scare people online here, because half the people are from Camp Yoronda on this Zoom. It's about a camp. It's about a camp that is not Camp Yoronda. So, yeah. We'll see where that goes.
We'll agree that this is great news that you've got something. So is it a sequel or is it a whole new?
No. It's a whole different show. Yeah.
Okay. There's a lot going on in the world right now, as you know, between the pandemic and politics and craziness. What's the importance of reading and writing literature now? Is it still relevant?
Oh my God, what a question. Hey, let me get my prop.
Ha ha, very authorial.
Oh my God, there's something in that pipe. What is the role of literature? Oh my God. Well, you know, I was thinking the other day, it's kind of weird that somebody opens a book and reads things that never happened to people who never existed. Like, that's kind of a weird thing right off the bat. And that you allow a writer to manipulate your feelings and your thoughts. That when you open up that book, you're saying, okay, take me on this journey or whatever. And so I think a good book just makes you feel less lonely, that there's other people out in the world. You can look into other people's thoughts and emotions in a way you don't just walking around in the world. And I think, if you connect with the writer and what they're trying to say, it makes you feel like there's another person on your side in the world. It's it's like a fist bump to another human being out there. I'm with you. I got you. Yeah.
Is there anything else that we haven't covered that you'd like to add or tell us? Let us know.
I don't know. You could review the book. That might be helpful, like on Amazon or chapters out there. I think those reviews are helpful. I saw a couple on Goodreads that people had left. So I think that's helpful for people who don't know who I am or thinking, should I buy this book? So that'd be helpful. But, other things. I should thank people. Good thing you cued me here. I should thank my wife and son, Kelly and Sawyer, for just allowing me to sit in a chair for 6 months and be fairly unproductive in any other element in my life. That's something to be thankful for. New Star has been great. Rolf and Vlad and Melissa, they've been so good. My editors, Susan Fish and Audrey McLennan, they certainly helped mold this book into what it is. And thank you, Suzanne, for emceeing this and doing such a good job. And there were people along the line who read the book before I sent it anywhere, and so, like my neighbor Tim and teaching friend Margot and my sister Erin, it helps just to hear somebody say, yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's a good book. It should be published. Yeah. So those people were helpful. And all these people watching, there's a lot of people watching. It says 70 participants, but there's a lot of couples and families. So I'm sure it's over 100 here. And it's a shame. It is such a shame that this isn't a party, that we're not in a room with 100 people, like, laughing. Like, that would be
Next time.
That's the next one. The next book. Yeah,
Next
you got to
big party.
Yeah, you got to find excuses to have good times.
No, you don't need an excuse. just living. So you should definitely be very proud of this, because it's a huge accomplishment, and something that a lot of people don't get to realize, but would like to. It's a wonderful book. And I think we'd all love to hear another song, Sean, if you don't mind. And after that, I'd be happy to ask you some of the questions from the audience, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to pop them in the Q&A box as opposed to the chat box, and it'll be brought to my attention. The button's at the bottom of your screen there. Take it away, Sean.
All right. This is a song that, I don't know, it's about a guy whose life is screwed up and goes away. Kind of like the guy in the book, I guess. Going where the pace of life is never hurried. Going where the four directions never change. Going where the seasons strip away ambition. Going where little lady knows my name. Taking the first seat against a window. Taking the first job that comes my way. Taking my best suit for Sunday service. Making peace with fortune come what may. Leaving expectation on a platform bench. Leaving that fish on line. Leaving while my spirit's light enough to load. Gonna leave this lonesome city far behind. Coming home when my two hands are worthy. Coming home when I could make amends. Coming home when I can look a brave man in the eye. Don't cry, Ma, I'm coming home again. Don't cry, Ma, I'm coming home again. I'm sure you're all clapping at your computer screens.
Yes, I expect they are. So we have a few questions here for you, Sean, and one of them we touched on already, and that from Susan Watt says, since you've been thinking about this book for a long time now, I'm curious about whether there are also sequels in that mind of yours. If not, what are your thoughts about future fiction writing? So we know you have another book in the work. Would you ever revisit David's world and go back and follow him into the future?
No, I wouldn't go back to that world, but I will tell you that when I was writing the book, like, you almost start to feel like they're real people, that there's things happening in their lives that you should probably be writing about, or what else is going on in the background, or like they become real people. Like, just, and really when you start writing them, they're not as fleshed out as, you don't have maybe a great picture of what they are, but you know, maybe it took a couple years for them to just settle in and me to figure out who they were. Good question.
That's great. David Wellhauser says, do you want to visit Japan with your family?
I went back in 2009 with Kelly, and we spent a week in Tokyo and a week traveling with friends of ours. We went to Kyoto, traveled around there. I love that country. I love that country, and I'm sure I'm going to go back for sure. I still have friends there, and I just love the people. Japan is amazing. I don't know what they're going to do with the Olympics, but I don't know. I love Japan. I love Japan.
Okay, Mary Todd says, hi, Sean, what motivated your storyline?
What motivated the storyline? I'd thought of the climax to the novel before I thought of the start of the novel. So I had the end already in my head, and that kind of pushed me to figure out how it got there. So I don't know why I pictured that scene, but I knew where the two paths of the novel meet. I'd already pictured that in my head for some reason, and so I started with the end.
That's interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
Nathan Manty says, when can we expect the audiobook read by the author?
Oh my God, yeah. I had asked the publisher, I had asked New Star, what do you think about an audiobook? And Rolf said, well, you've got recording equipment, just read the book. Like, I practiced those scenes that I read like 15 times before I read them, and it was very difficult for me to get more than a couple of sentences without fumbling over a word. I don't know if it's gonna happen. It might not be me. I don't know. If there's somebody out there who's a good reader, that's Stephen Colbert. He reads the lines that come out of his mouth one after the other. He must be a very good reader.
He must.
Stephen, if you would like to read the book, please. Yes.
Get in touch with New Star Books. Yeah. Mike Bruce says, curious, Sean, any idea if your thought patterns writing the book and writing song lyrics are similar? I know my blood sugar drops fast when I'm writing.
Yeah, my blood sugar as a non-diabetic stays fairly level, Mike. However, with song lyrics, you pack a lot into a tight space. It's more like a poem. And sometimes the best line in a song is just, yeah, 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 or oh, baby, or something that is not grammatically correct, or, it just feels right with the moment. And so it's a lot different. It works different muscles in your brain for sure.
Okay, great. We have a couple of requests here. Is there going to be an opportunity post-pandemic to meet the author and have a book signing, or a way to have you sign the current book that they have?
I will drive to your house and sign your book within a 100-kilometer radius of my house. I will come to your house. Yes, I will sign anything. We just have to get together. Post-pandemic, I've had one shot, so I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go anywhere. I told a book club, I will. They're going to read my book in their book club, and I'm going to join them in the book club. So that'll be fun.
That's great.
Yeah.
Marna Morgan asks, have you ever had a fear of something happening to one of your own students whilst in your care?
Yes. Yes. And so that plays into the plot of the book for sure. That, I see probably 4,000 to 5,000 students a year. I've done this 20 years, so I've seen, 100,000 students. And when you're outside and doing things that aren't in the confines of a school, you don't know if a pile of hornets is going to fly out of the ground and start stinging everybody. And so, yeah, there's some risk management stuff in the book. Yeah.
Okay. Ian Mann says, hi, Sean. Have you considered drawing on your experience as an outdoor educator to write nonfiction educational materials that can be used by other outdoor educators?
No. I could see myself, what I could see myself doing someday is writing curriculum, of trying to link curriculum to outdoor activities in the environment, and maybe something like that. I think that would be more along the lines of how I think about things.
Okay, got another interesting one here from anonymous attendee. Which character is least like you? Was there any character that you disliked? And if so, how did you make them engaging to readers?
Well, there's a parent in the book that gets on David's nerves and tries to kind of sabotage him. And part of what I I was going at in the book is that I made David like, he's a good guy. He wants to do the right thing all the time. And even though, you've got this guy who's, pretty clean cut, there are people in the world who aren't going to like you or aren't going to like the things you're doing. And I know, I'm a good guy, right? And people want to beat the crap out of me for 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 taking their jeans for a week. So yeah, that was part of it. Was actually, I wanted to build in some that even though this guy was a good guy, that there were people out there that didn't like him. Which is
right.
just how life goes. Like you could be Mother Teresa and people rip you apart. So, yep.
Okay, we've got Jason Patton here asking, did your concept of the ending change as you got further into the writing, or did you stick to your original plan?
I stuck to the plan. And certainly, I read that like Stephen King just starts writing and doesn't know where the ending is going to be. That things unwind and it goes where it goes. And I can't imagine writing like that. Like my second novel, I already know how it ends. I know how it ends. I know the big scene that's going to happen at the end. And it's just, how do we get there? And I think part of the problem with a lot of writers is they know how to start and they've got the ending, and it's just that middle that you can get really stuck in the mud with. And, it becomes more of doing a crossword puzzle than being creative. So, yeah.
Yeah. Vicky Kimmett wants to know when we can expect to see that second book about a camp.
It'll be faster. So I'm going to take, I'm going to take time off from work a year from September, and I will get that done. And then hopefully the publishing will be easier, and it might be better, and it might have themes that are more sellable kind of thing. I don't want to spill anything, but
Okay.
I don't know.
All right. Another anonymous question is, did you have the split chapter format in place from the beginning, or did that develop as you wrote?
I had that right from the start, and so yeah, for people who haven't read the book, like every 2 pages it switches from Canada to Japan, Canada, Japan, and I was worried that would just be too much for a reader. But everybody seems to just get used to it. You get used to it pretty fast. And in my writing, I had to back off on trying to remind everybody what happened the 2 pages before. That when I came back to Japan or came back to Canada, I'd say, oh, so here's David sitting at a table, when he was already sitting at the table before, and I'd already written that. And I had to learn that readers are smarter than I gave them credit for. That they could remember from 2 pages ago what was going on.
Yeah. Aaron Carter wants to know when your euchre book is coming out.
That's my sister, and I am a great euchre player. And so anytime we're playing euchre, I tell them I'm going to write a book about euchre, which is, it's a tricky game. It's a tricky game, and to be a good player, it's hard to explain to people how to be a really good euchre player. But yeah, I'm going to write that euchre book too. I don't know whether that's going to be a bestseller, but it'll help you be a better euchre player.
Yeah, that'll be in the nonfiction department.
Yeah, nonfiction, and well, maybe it'll be like a murder at the euchre tournament or something. And, yeah, we can work it in together.
Yeah, it works. Edward Chesky says, "Hey Sean, any plans for a French version for Francophone audiences?"
Well, I think before French, there's a larger audience out there in Japan. So my friend Doi bought 10 books, and some of his friends were asking, where's the Japanese translation? And I was like, you know English, you translate the book. So I just need, I don't know how that works or how that catches on, that a book, I would say 30 years ago when I was in Japan, Japanese people were so interested in what anybody from the West thought of their country that they just it's like, I don't know, it's like Canada and hockey or something, that we just, we want everybody to feel like we're the best at hockey, and they were very concerned about what Westerners thought about their food and their culture. And I know that's changed a lot. Like when Kelly and I went back, you know, when I was in Japan, I'd be the only white guy on the train. But now it's much more diverse, and I don't know whether they'd be as excited in reading a novel about some Westerner walking around their country. So I don't know. New Star has agents looking at translation, etc. opportunities. All right.
Woo-hoo!
Great. I assume that means more royalties, right, Rob? Yeah.
So I have a couple of more comments here and one more question, and then I think we'll wrap up.
Yeah, we should wrap up. This is,
Yeah. Mike Bruce wants you to throw a little euchre into your camp book. Lisa Lipset wants help with Settlers of Catan gameplay. And Ian Folds would like to know if you'd consider a book launch for your second novel from an Ontario camp close to your heart.
Sure, but yeah, what if that book is also full of sex and tragedy, Ian? Can we still hold it at a children's camp?
After hours.
Yeah, after hours. Yeah, Camp Huronda, after hours.
After hours, yeah.
Maybe that was every night at camp.
Yeah. I think we'll wrap it up there. And thank you so much to everyone for joining us. And I'm going to hand it back now to Melissa, who has a special announcement. A couple of lucky guests are going to win a copy of Outside. And thank you, Sean, very much, as well as Rolf and Melissa and Audrey as well. And I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their evening.
Thank you, everybody. This was really good. Thank you.
All right. Before we sign off, if you'll just forgive me a couple of little clicks here, we'll be doing a random number draw here. I've got my list of everybody who registered today, and we'll do a little draw here to see, of course, there's a captcha. This didn't happen when I tested it. The computers, they need to know everything. Okay, so the first number we have here is number 62, and if I switch here to my little spreadsheet, we have 62 is Jim Hamilton. If Jim is still around, we will get in touch and let you know about the book that you've won. And we'll do one more here. We've decided to hand 2 away. Let's see. Again, one more time. $72. All right, let's switch screens again. Is Susan Lindsay. Okay, so we have everybody's details and we will get in touch with the lucky winners here. And on that note, I would like to thank everyone who joined us today for all their wonderful questions and their encouragement in the chat. And thank you to Sean and for your wonderful book, and B, for the music that you've shared with us tonight and the conversation and the good times, and also to Suzanne for hosting and your wonderful guidance and conversation and presence. We're very much appreciative of everyone who's here tonight, and we'll leave it at that. Enjoy your night, everyone. We'll see you next time.